Hi everyone, Seth Screamo here again with the best of Wooster, and today I am at Wooster Brush with their president, Ben Maibach. We're going to learn a little bit about what he does and how he got involved in the painting industry. Ben, how you doing today?
Good, Seth. Thanks for having me. Excited to be here.
Awesome. All right, so let's get into the questions here. So Wooster Brush has been a pillar of this community for over a century. What does it mean to you to lead a company with such a deep-rooted legacy?
Yeah, it's quite an honor, honestly, to lead this company. We will celebrate next year our 125th anniversary, and I'm still just the 10th president in company history. So we have had a lot of leaders with a long lead time here. And so if you think back of people who helped develop the city of Worcester, years ago, you'll often see a lot of the same names that are on the list. So it's incredibly humbling for me to be a part of that list. And I think it's a big challenge to keep the legacy going that the company has had all those years. So it's just a real honor to lead this company, and I'm proud to work here, and I'm proud of the people that I work with.
Awesome. So, one of the big things when it comes to running a company is you need to have really strong leadership principles. Which of those have guided you in preserving the company's values while steering it towards the future?
Sure. I think, at Wooster Brush, when we talk about our guiding principles, we talk about really our purpose, and our purpose is people at Wooster Brush, and we sort of group those into three categories of people. First and foremost, when we're making decisions, is our employees and their families. So when we're making long-term decisions for the business, what we're focused on is our employees and their families first. And so we make choices and changes to our company that are in the best long-term interest of those folks. Sometimes we'll make short-term decisions that are not as exciting, for our people, but in the long term, we believe that if we take care of our people and their families, that our business will thrive. We do things like have very low-cost health care, and we haven't laid anybody off since 1954, which is something that probably a lot of the listeners already know, but we think laying somebody off is the worst thing we can do to a family, so we really try to avoid that. Even though there's been good business reasons maybe to do that over time, we don't think there is such a thing as a good business reason to lay somebody off, so we've really tried to avoid that as best we can. The second group of people we focus on when we talk about our purpose is the end user. That's the painter who's actually using our products. Most of the time that's somebody doing it for a living who's a professional painter, or somebody painting their house, which is often their most valuable asset. So we know that they have to have a good experience. So we keep them in mind. And then the third group of people that we focus on is our customers. And so, you'll notice it's last on our list. Sometimes people say put the customer first and everything takes care of itself. We actually sort of flip that on its head and we put them last. We hope they don't feel like they're last, but we tell them this same story as well. We try to be the best partners we can, but we're not putting their interests ahead of our employees, and that's kind of where we are. And so we talk about that a lot, that's our purpose, and that's really what guides us. And then our core values on the other side of the coin is do the right thing. I often joke that there's a lot of books out there about how to run a business. One should just be you open the first page, it says do the right thing, and then you close it. And that's really served us well for a long time. The second core value is trust and teamwork, right? Most companies would have some version of that. And then the third one, and not the least important here, but probably one of the more important, is a passion for quality. We're not around 175 years because we've made perfect business decisions for 175 years. We've made great products for 175 years. And so you can afford some maybe missteps in business along the way if you're giving the end user that great quality. And so we talk about here culture and quality all the time. And those are the things that can't change, but everything else can change. So that was a little bit of a long-winded answer talking about what guides us, but that's really the core of who we are. And that's my, 3-minute speech on Wooster Brush.
No, definitely. Especially given what has happened since Wooster Brush came to be, saying that you haven't laid off anyone since, the 1950s is crazy. And I think more people really need to own in on that. Can you share some key moments in your journey to becoming president of Wooster Brush? What lessons have shaped you as a leader?
Yeah, sure. When I talk about my journey, and to keep this short so people don't have to listen for hours, I talk about my background a little bit. So I was lucky enough to start my career at Rubbermaid, and at Rubbermaid initially it was very much a new product development, marketing driven company. And while I was there interning through college, Newell Rubbermaid bought them, and Newell Rubbermaid was very much a productivity focused company. And so I got to see sort of in those first few years two different companies and how they acted and the things that they did. Then I went to Moen, which was a very engineering-driven company, directly after that. And so again, sort of saw in my first 6 or 7 years of work, 3 different ways businesses run, and those were all public companies. Then I moved to a small privately owned company up in Bedford Heights for 10 years, which gave me a little bit of a different view because a smaller privately owned company didn't have as many people to do as many things, and so I got to see and do lots of, I would say, a wider variety of tasks, and that really opened my eyes as well. And so when I came here to Wooster Brush 10 years ago, I would say that I had the opportunity to work and see several different companies in the way that those, whether they were engineering led, marketing led, new product development led, or even family led, was kind of a good background to try to build how I would like to see a company grow. And then you come to Wooster Brush, and it's really a servant leadership led company focused on people. And so tying all of the history of those other companies that I worked at, and taking kind of some of what they do best and tying it in with and making it really, how does Wooster Brush incorporate some of that stuff without changing who Wooster Brush is really the journey that kind of led me here. And the lessons that you learn as a leader along the way are varied, and there's tons of them. But mostly I had the opportunity to work for lots of different leaders. And so you get to see things you like in leaders and things you dislike in leaders, and then you try to hone your strategy accordingly and do the best you can. But there's no substitute for actually leading. To learn. So that's how I would answer that one.
No, definitely. You have to pick and choose certain things that will work in certain situations. There's no such thing as a wrong answer. There's always a better answer. So let's say you could, travel back in time and give yourself one piece of leadership advice. What would it be?
Sure. If I could give myself some advice when I was a kid and younger growing up that I do now that I didn't always do when I was a teenager maybe, or even coming up through college, and that's root for everyone. I think one of the simplest things we can all do is figure out ways to root for everyone around us to succeed. And when you start to do that, rather than maybe compare yourself to them or figure out ways to be better than other people, if you can figure out ways to help everyone around you, that ultimately that's going to lead people in a different way, sort of, because they know you have their back, and you can't do that. You can't make that up, right? It's got to be real when you're rooting for people. And so what I see mostly out of the leaders that I love the most is that they're rooting for everyone around them to succeed. They're not trying to figure out what that other leader does that's wrong, but they're trying to figure out what that they do that's right, and then how do we use that to better lift the company up altogether. So didn't always do that when I was in high school. I always tell people I wish I would have went to see every play that people put on. I was into sports when I was young, but I wish I would have supported some of the other things like kids in plays, or kids in reading and writing competitions, or speech and debate, and stuff that back then I just didn't care about in a way that I wish I would have now. And if I had regrets from when I was younger, those are what I would have. And so I'd like to tell myself to root for everyone and support everyone when I was younger.
No, it's definitely important to always see win-win in situations. They say that competition and then collaboration are two different things. The people at the top, they're always collaborating. So how has Wooster Brush evolved to stay at the forefront of the brush manufacturing industry while still honoring its traditions?
Sure. We have, really generations of innovation around here. When you talk about firsts, Wooster Brush was the first to do lots of different things, and I imagine we'll talk about it as we go into this, but we were the first to use synthetic filament in brush. We were the first to use synthetic filaments in roller covers. We created the first angle sash brush. All brushes were flat before that. So, historically, we've always had lots of innovation, and so when you talk about striking a balance, I think the balance is we have to stay innovative, and it's not, innovation is not counterintuitive to who we are. It is actually who we are. And so what that means is as paints change over time, so do all of our products, because we have to make our products work in today's paints. And so paints, used to be oil-based, now they're water-based. And so our products have to work now in water-based paints rather than oil-based. And so that's continually evolving, and I simplified that with just oil to water, but the paints, even water-based, are changing. Every year the paint companies are coming out with new stuff, and so we have to continually tweak our products to make sure they're working in those paints. And so I don't really think that the two things, innovation and tradition, are opposites here. I think they're actually the same thing at Wooster Brush, and so that's how we kind of handle that.
Awesome, for sure. Next question here. Balancing innovation or tradition, from your words, with a company's core identity can be challenging. What strategies have helped Wooster Brush navigate this balance?
Yeah, I think it's similar to what we just kind of talked about, but innovation is challenging, especially in the painting world, because painters can become creatures of habit, and so they like to use the same things. And so new items are often difficult to get placed in the marketplace, and the best way to do it is to kind of put it in a painter's hand and let them try it. And so we've done that. And so we talk about innovation as part of our identity, and so that's talking about it and focusing on it, having a team of people that are dedicated to innovation, and then having, the engineering support that we have and the team that we have that can help take those ideas and bring them to market in a way that makes sense for the end user and also quickly tells a story of what those new products do. That's how we kind of balance that.
Can you share an example of a time when Wooster Brush had to pivot or adapt to market changes?
Yeah. Have you heard about tariffs recently? But, historically there are basically I think every business is always pivoting and always changing to market changes. We talked about paint changing. That's one thing. But you can go back into the mid 1900s when there was, the Chinese trade war, the first Chinese trade war, and we couldn't get hog bristle anymore. And so that was what derived the need to develop synthetic filament that acted like Chinese hog bristle, which is what, brushes were made of. And, Wooster Brush had to pivot and what they made a brush out of effectively. Over time, we're constantly changing things to adapt to market conditions, whether paint's changing out in the market, whether the substrates that people are painting on are changing. Industrial coatings are becoming more and more popular in factories and things like that. And so we're getting involved in that, as well as not just kind of painting on walls in a house. And so we're constantly adjusting and tweaking what we do to stay current with the market from a product perspective, but also then from a brand perspective. So about 5 years ago, we did a whole rebranding of our company and relaunched every single product with new branding that spoke more to the consumer of today, where our old packaging spoke to the consumers, how they like to read things more. In the past, it's more quick bullets now on our packaging and things like that. And so we're kind of doing that from a product standpoint, from a marketing standpoint, but also from a technology standpoint would be the third way that I would say that is. If you walk around our factory, we don't make brushes anything like we used to, except for the end result is a high quality brush. But there's a lot more technology that goes into making a brush or a roller today than 100 years ago. And so we've incorporated that too as the market has continued to change.
Awesome. No, definitely making sure that you keep the end result, and the main thing is definitely key. There's different ways to accomplish success, but whatever you want at the end needs to be the same. Wooster Brush is known for its strong workplace culture. What do you believe makes it such a great place to work?
Yeah, I think it goes back to sort of where I started, which is our commitment to our people. The reason that it's a good place to work is because we care a whole lot about our people, and then we make business decisions that back that up. And so I won't belabor that point with this answer, but that's really what we do. And we're not we're not perfect. We strive to do the best we can by our employees, but we can always get better. But keeping our heart in the right place when our minds are making decisions is critical, and it's always with the focus on our people.
How does Wooster Brush invest in employee growth and development?
We do that in lots of different ways. There's training courses, Dale Carnegie leadership training courses. So there's some external things that we do like that, but there's also internal trainings that we do. And one of the cool things that Wooster Brush has is we have a lot of people here with longevity. We recently had someone celebrate 59 years of service. 59 years of service means you have a lot of history and a lot of knowledge, right? And so we have a lot of employees training each other as well. That's one thing we've been blessed with, is long-term employees employees that have a ton of knowledge that can train the new employees up on the ways that we do things. And so I would say it's a combination of internal and external development that we're talking about with our people. But we really believe, where we can to promote from within, and then, where we don't have maybe the things we need internally sometimes in a position, then that's when we go outside. But we do our best to vote from within whenever we can, and then that gives people the chance for growth, right? And so that's what we're shooting for all the time.
No, definitely. When I was in the Marine Corps, one of the big things that we always did was we always try to pass down knowledge to the next generation. And I think that it's a key component is if someone's been in a position or have worked somewhere for a long time, odds are they're very good at what they do. So if you could just replicate that knowledge and hopefully implement better ways to improve it, then you're going to have a winning culture 10 out of 10 times. So what strategies have been most effective in attracting and retaining top talent in today's competitive job market?
Yeah, this is a tricky one, right? Because every person listening has a different idea of what they want to be attracted to. And so what we've really done here is sort of stay true to our core, which is to create, a company that cares about people, that values family. And, I always joke, if you want to make the most amount of money in the world, Wooster Brush is probably not the place. But if you want to have great work-life balance and have a really nice life, this is a great place to come and do that. And so, we're not perfect for everyone. So, top talent, there's lots of different top talent out there. And we're looking for a very specific type that values what the Wooster community has to offer as a place to live, values what our culture is in terms of, how we go about doing things. And, it's not that we don't work overtime, but we really work really hard to tell our people that we want them to work hard when they're here and then go home and be with their families. We're not really looking for that 24/7 work ethic or work here. We really don't want that because we don't think that's great balance for people. We want them to be happy at home because that's the only chance they have of success here. And so we really balance that. And so some ways I think we go against culture today a little bit. We still offer things like profit sharing. We still have a pension. We still offer post-retirement health care benefits. And those are all things that most companies don't do anymore that we still do. And so that's all part of the package. But not everybody likes that part of the package, right? If you like, we're a little bit parental in that way, right? If you want your retirement taken care of, we're a great place. If you want to make the most money you can today, maybe Wooster Brush isn't the perfect place for you. And so we balance that, but we try to find people that fit our culture first and foremost. And then if we find people that fit our culture and they have that top talent, then typically they'll stay.
No, that's good. Especially right now, it seems like everyone's looking for the next best thing. In reality, I've always been a firm believer of if you're looking at someone else's grass, if you just water your grass can be so much greener. So as one of the largest employers in the area, how has Wooster Brush contributed to the local economy and job market?
Sure. I think, we talk about, three groups of people that we're very thankful for all the time, not just like from a culture standpoint, but when for instance we're going to celebrate our 175th next year, like I mentioned, there's really three parts of that. We want to celebrate with our employees, we want to celebrate with our customers, but we also want to celebrate with the Wooster community because we think all three are big key reasons why we're 175 years old. And so, we employ over 600 people, most of which are here in Worcester or Wayne County. We do have a distribution facility in Reno and then some salesmen around the country, but primarily most of those folks are right here in Worcester. And so they're working here, living here, paying taxes here and doing all those things. And we think that contributes to the local economy. Also, we continue to grow and expand. And so, we just built a new building up on the north end of town, and that creates a new tax base that ultimately generates more funds to help the city. Aside from that, we donate to a fair amount of charities in town, and we try to make sure that we share some of the wins we have with the community and the people that need it. And there's just a ton of people in this community that are out there doing great things for Worcester all the time, and Wooster Brush wants to support that as best we can.
For sure. It's good to take care of the people that take care of you, right? What are the biggest advantages and maybe challenges of keeping manufacturing local rather than outsourcing?
Sure, and this one's can be a tricky question, I suppose. But typically, right now, some of our biggest challenges are just finding enough folks, to work in the factory. We are blessed in Wayne County to have a lot of different manufacturing opportunities, and right now, there's a little bit of a scarcity of workers, particularly during COVID. That was a little worse, and it's softening a little bit now. We're able to get people a little bit easier, but it's still probably our biggest challenge. And so sometimes we'd like to bring more things in, but we can't find enough people to run the machines, and so we're not able to do that. But what keeps us from outsourcing more is really two things. Number one is we want our people to have jobs, right? That's what we're here for, is we're here for them. And so we don't want to outsource too much. That doesn't mean, the world is a very global economy now, so we are buying things from all over the world, but primarily we're putting them together here. And so we're really trying to protect our people and our jobs. Sometimes that's at a negative cost, right? You can buy things sometimes cheaper in China, depending on what the tariff is that day. But we are, we're constantly balancing those things. Oftentimes, though, we bring things inside because we can't get the quality that we want from an outside vendor. And so you'll find on a tour of Wooster Brush that we're very vertically integrated. And most of that vertical integration over time happened because the quality we were getting from the outside wasn't enough to keep us going the way we wanted on the inside. So we kind of brought that in-house. And so, I often say on your first tour, you might think we're, 7 or 8 different companies. We're doing injection molding, we're making brushes, we're making rollers, and all those things require very different skills. So our engineering team, our maintenance team, and our setup folks, really have to know a lot of different things in order to keep our business going. And we've been pretty good at that over the years. And so it's definitely a challenge to balance all of that, but with good people, challenges are overcome, and that's where we are.
No, definitely having the right team is going to make things happen. So have you noticed a shift in consumer demand for American-made products, and how has that influenced Wooster Brush?
Sure. I think when you're 175 years old, I think you've seen things ebb and flow through generations, and American-made products, I think are popular at times, and then maybe less popular, more popular recently. What we've found is consumer demand is often driven as much, I think all things similar, most people would want to buy something made in America. But when they can understand the quality that we make relative to some of the stuff that's not made in the United States, that's a real win for us, and that's when people will continue to choose us. And so we're very proud to be made in America, and we think that the quality we make is unmatched. And so during COVID, one of the great benefits that we got was the Chinese supply was disrupted, and there were several months where there was nothing on the shelf except for ours, because we hold a lot of inventory. And so a lot of people during COVID tried Wooster Brush because it was the only brush on shelf, and where they would normally maybe have bought that cheaper brush down below. And then when they try it and they buy our stuff for $1 or $2 more, they realize, there's like all this aha moment, like, oh, that's why you pay $2 brush, because the experience that you have is so much better. And so we think getting the trial is just as important as being American made, but we don't think that anybody else can make brushes like us, and our people can do that. And so we're very proud to be American made, and we think that we want to stay that way for as long as possible.
Oh, for sure. And you get what you pay for, right? If you want something to last longer, that little bit more of an investment is going to definitely pay off. So Wooster Brush stays really engaged with the local community. Are there any initiatives or partnerships that you are most proud of?
Yeah, I would say, I'm going to answer this one personally. Wooster Brush is involved in a lot of stuff, and I try to stay as involved in the community as I can, and doing things like the Economic Development Council, working with the Chamber of Commerce, and just doing, different things for lots of nonprofits. But one nonprofit that has sort of touched me personally is O-Huddle. And so while I would tell you, I got matched up several years ago with a young man when he was in 7th grade, and he's now a sophomore in college. He's actually interning here at Wooster Brush, which is kind of a fun connection. And that's just, kind of taking time to invest in one person's life. But it's also, sort of sometimes the most rewarding, because oftentimes oftentimes Wooster Brush is just, donating money to let the other people do good work around town. And this was an instance where, personally I was able to get involved in a young guy's life, and he's just an exceptional young man, and has done great stuff. And it's been really rewarding for me to see that and be a part of his life, and to stay connected with him even after he sort of graduated the O-Huddle program. So this is my plug, I guess, for everybody to go out there and become an O-Huddle mentor, because it means a lot to the kids, but it's also very rewarding for the mentor themselves. So when I talk about, when you ask me what I'm most proud of, that's probably the one.
It's funny you bring that up. I just finished my O-Huddle training, so next year I'm going to be one of those mentors. Super excited about it. Now, are there any upcoming projects, sponsorships, or initiatives that you're particularly excited about?
Yeah, I think there's lots of, we have lots of new products coming out into the marketplace. Over the last couple of years, we've really, re-engaged our new product development. And so, as we've been going to shows this year and next, there's just a ton of new products and new things for us to talk about. Grip Tech brushes, which are kind of help your hand on the brush become less fatigued by having soft grips on the brushes. Hook and hold products, which help you have a hook on the brush to hang on a can when you're not using it. So sometimes just simple things that the industry really hasn't done, but that we're bringing out into the marketplace. So I'm very excited about that. I would say that I'm also excited about our new building up north. It's now kind of getting to be a year or two old, but there's still lots of new stuff happening up there, and there's still new stuff that we're tapping into. And so, that's been a really rewarding investment for the company, but it's also been great to see how the team really put that together from an idea stage to make it the best possible way we could. So we're shipping better than we ever have. We're manufacturing some things up there more efficiently than we ever have. And so those are all really rewarding things to see as we continue to move forward.
Awesome, for sure. So let's say we had a crystal ball here and we could see what Wooster Brush is playing into the city's growth over the next decade. What do you see happening?
Yeah, when we built our new building, we built it with the intention of further expansion someday. And so up there, we built a 600,000 square foot facility. We're using 400,000 square feet, and our plan was always to rent that 200,000 that we didn't use. We also have the ability to add on another 200,000 square feet. And so, over the next 10 years, our goal is sort of maybe to fill up that space and to continue to develop what we can. But in the meantime, we've also brought in a cool partner that was new to the city called Welch Packaging, who's renting that 200,000 square foot that we have now. And so that's additional industry and additional things that help the city grow and thrive now. So our growth over time will continue to do that, but we were able to build a building such that somebody else could come in and help the city right now. And so we look for ways, to grow our business. We think growing our business, keeping our employees employed is the best way to keep growing the city over time. And so we're looking to do that all the time. But I would say probably the building is the biggest way that we've contributed, and probably the continued expansion of that will be the way we contribute over the next couple of years.
Sustainability is a growing focus across industries. What steps has Wooster Brush taken to implement eco-friendly practices?
Yeah, this is an interesting one, especially for a paint company, because there's not a lot of, once paint touches something, there's not a lot of recycling that can happen. And so, our packaging and things like that, we really focus on, when we're creating scrap here that's recyclable, we recycle it. And so there's a lot of packaging and stuff like that goes out to recycling folks that do that. But also some of our scrap, when we're making products like roller covers, we can regrind and reuse some of that stuff. And so, oftentimes we try to find the things that are both good for the environment, but also can help save us money long term by reducing scrap. And so the combination of those two things, try to make us eco-friendly. The painting world in general is mildly eco-friendly, I'll call it, but there are things we do, like using recycled trees and things like that to make wood handles for our brushes on certain products and things like that. So we're kind of thinking about it all the time, but it's one of those things that once you put paint onto something, you can't recycle it anymore. If paints become recyclable, then our stuff would be as well. But dipping stuff in paint tends to hurt that. So we're kind of on both sides of that coin. Not that we're against being eco-friendly, but we have to make stuff that works in paint, and so we do what we need to do to make that happen.
Yeah, I think sometimes when you do something, you can try to prevent things, but you can't prevent everything, right? So how do you balance sustainability efforts with maintaining the high quality standard that Wooster Brush is known for?
Sure. I think, I'm going to answer this from the quality perspective. We will not make a decision that will sacrifice quality. And so oftentimes I describe it as we're purposefully inefficient. There are things out there that we could do more efficiently, but we think it harms the quality of our product, and so we don't choose to do those when maybe some of our competitors do. And so when you come on a tour, what you'll see is there's still a lot of hands-on checking of product where people are touching and feeling and looking at brushes. Everybody in the manufacturing process has the ability to throw a product out if it doesn't meet the quality standards that we want. And so we focus a lot on that quality. And so we talked about it at the beginning as one of our core values, right? A passion for quality. It comes back here in everything we do. We're never going to sacrifice quality for efficiency. If we can gain efficiency and maintain quality, we're looking for lots of ways to do that. But we're never going to sacrifice quality for efficiency.
So I'm reading the 7 Habits of Successful People right now. At the beginning of the book, they talk about the golden goose and how the guy who has the goose, he's happy about the golden eggs that come out, but he wants more of them. And so he tries to get more, and eventually he loses his golden goose because of that. So definitely sometimes just being okay with the way things are going and not rocking the boat. Like if it ain't broke, don't break it. That's always a good thing to follow. So what advice would you give to an aspiring entrepreneur looking to build a lasting brand like Wooster Brush?
Yeah, I mean, this one's when you asked me about this one before, it's an interesting thing, right? 175-year-old company, and I've only been here the last 10, right? A lot of folks would say we don't have to be very entrepreneurial to take over a 165-year-old company. But I think that every company, in order to survive, has to remain entrepreneurial in different areas and different things. And so, we've done a lot in the last really 5 to 10 years of moving our business forward so that we can prepare for the future better than we were before. And so, you've got to take some risks and invest in the business in areas that you believe will long-term have a benefit. And so our North facility, we don't do a ton of direct-to-consumer shipping right now, but when we built that North facility, we invested in an area that gives us the ability to do that more efficiently. And so over time, we know that will become utilized, but we're invested in it now so that we can develop the core skills to be able to do that. So when we need to continue to roll that out, that we'll be ready. We always joke that the internet's probably not a fad, so we assume people will keep buying products online. And historically, we've sold, more to the brick and mortar type of shops, but we have to be prepared and ready for the future. And so in some ways that's, entrepreneurial. In some ways that's, making sure that we're adapting to market changes like we talked about before. And so you're doing that. What advice would I give to aspiring entrepreneurs is find value, right? If you're not adding value, then you're probably not going to be able to win. But if you add value, then you have something at least you can win. And then you've just got to, figure out how to make it work. And most businesses, if there's demand for it, you can make it work. But be curious is probably my biggest entrepreneurial advice. The more you learn, the more you read, the more you talk to other people who have done it before. It doesn't mean you have to do it just the same way somebody else does, but they've learned lessons that you can learn and get baselines of things so that when you're ready to take on your new business or your new entrepreneurial exercise, that you have more background. And so, when I was 25, I thought experience didn't matter, right? I thought maybe I knew everything when I was 25. Now I'm getting closer to 50, and I realized, man, I wish I had known more when I was 25. Because over time, you realize surrounding yourself with people who have done it before, who have done other things, and who have run businesses can teach you so much, so you can you don't have to make every mistake on your own. Let other people who have made mistakes tell you about them so you can learn. And so I think that's a key part of to being entrepreneurial if I had to give any advice.
Yeah, I think it's definitely super important to learn from other people's mistakes instead of trying to go through it on your own, especially if you want to have a business that is going to be sustainable, right? You got to keep the main thing the main thing. And that means if you're not learning how to become better, provide more value to the marketplace, eventually there isn't going to be a marketplace for you anymore. So what do you think is the biggest mistake that new business owners make, and how do you think that they can avoid it?
Yeah, I think this is a difficult one. People make lots of different kinds of mistakes. We make mistakes every day as well here. One of the common things that I see, though, is someone will start small in a business, right? And they'll be pretty successful at it. And then they'll quickly say, well, what else can I add on to this business, right? And they'll go, sort of wide instead of deep. And oftentimes they try to go too wide too fast. And so they try to bring in too many different things or do too many different things all at once. And so they sort of lose track of what their core focus is. And so, I think Wooster Brush is a good testament of that. And it's really a lesson that I learn as I come here is, we could import brushes and rollers from China as well, but it would be to the detriment of what we're doing today, right? And so, a car maker, sometimes I always relate us to car makers, but if you're making a BMW or a high cost car, right, and you know how to make high quality, beautiful cars. If you don't like BMWs, I apologize for this analogy, but whatever. But you're not necessarily going out there and being able to make a low cost car at the same time, right? There are different companies who are better at making that entry level point than BMW would be, but at the same time, they can't make the quality. So both of those guys have different skill sets in their core, and so sometimes they try to say, well, BMW says, well, how do I get a $15,000 car out there to compete with a Kia Soul or something like that? I don't know. I'm making up stuff now, but and that can be very challenging for a company because the people we have here, we want them focused on quality. And so we don't want to make a lot of things that we're not as focused on quality. And so we try to stay true to our core, which is just similar to what you just said before you asked this question, but stay true to the core, not go too wide. You can't be all things to everybody. Do what you do the best and be awesome at it.
Yeah, one of my mentors always told me, do a good job, make sure everyone knows about it. Well, Ben, that's all the questions I have for you today. I do have one more, though. I always like to end these episodes off with something super positive. Ben, what's the best thing about your life right now?
Best thing about my life is my family, for sure. I am blessed to have a great wife, Courtney. We've been married for 16 years, and she's a great partner in life, and that makes probably all parts of my life better. And then we're lucky to have 3 healthy little kids, Benny, Bo, and Cece. And you come home from work every day after making lots of decisions, and there's nothing quite like having your little 5-year-old daughter run up and give you a big hug. And so those moments are the best thing in my life every day, and so I'm very thankful for that and for the family that I'm surrounded with. So the people I work with here are great, but they're definitely a second to my family at home. So that would be my best part.
Awesome. Well, Ben, thank you so much for being on the show today. Anyone who needs some additional information, you're welcome to reach out to myself, Seth Scrimo, at 330-1547. Have a great day. Bye.